Good morning, one and all presenter. This is Department of CSC organizes on online 5-day faculty development program on full stack development from 11th July to 15th July 2023. Now let me invite Dr. Ramya ma'am to introduce the resource person. Welcome.
Good morning, all. It's my pleasure to introduce the resource person of today's session, Mr. Avinash, who is the founder and chief executive officer at Increase Techlutions LLP, a startup recognized by Startup India and DP IIT. He began his career at Gust Valley Technovations LLP in Bangalore, where he worked as a product development engineer and trainer for 2 years. After gaining valuable experience, he embarked on his entrepreneurship journey by founding this Increase Technologies LLP. He holds a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering from PSR Engineering College, Sivagasi. His expertise lies in embedded systems, IoT, machine learning, Flutter, blockchain, augmented reality, system design, and web development. Throughout his career, Avinash has mentored and trained over 2,200 students, faculty members, and professionals from all over India, including esteemed institutions like the IISc. He has assisted them in building projects based on Industry 4.0 and Web 3.0 technologies. Currently, Avinash is working on a new technological project called Incrix Edge Intelligence Network IEIN. This project aims to revolutionize the internet architecture and it has received funding from EDII Tamil Nadu. The project has been categorized as an innovation idea. Thank you.
Now let me call upon Mr. Avinash to continue the program.
Thank you. Thank you for your warm introduction. So once again, this is Avinash. So thank you, Ramya, thank you, Ramya ma'am, for this particular introduction. So and I also show gratitude to like Comrade Engineering College because I started my career uh, by just signing an MOU with an Comrade Engineering College. So and also thanks for this opportunity for Anand sir to organize this particular program. Right? So so that's it. So we can just enter into our session. So just give me a second. I will share my screen. Easy. So I'm just now able to reconnect. So can you make me presenter, sir?
You are the presenter now. You can share your screen, sir.
One. So it's showing only meeting organizer and presenter can share.
You are being made as a presenter, sir.
Okay.
1 minute, sir.
Yeah, sure.
You please share your screen now, sir.
Mm, okay. So you can do one thing. So just remove myself, remove Avinash, and again add to the center, please. So it's not
One
shown.
minute. 1 minute, sir. 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. It's showing now.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Is my screen is visible now?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yeah, thank you. So I think you guys already completed like 3 days of this particular program, right? So you have completed and like basics of Bootstrap and some front-end frameworks like React, and after that you continue with a Node.js, right? So today is the session for an Express.js. Yeah. So before entering to that particular Express.js library, so we need to talk about a little bit things like what is server, right? So I think in previous session you have completed what is Node.js and how to write code in particular JavaScript, and you know this difference between an basic vanilla JavaScript and as well as a Node.js. So Node.js, which is a runtime environment of a JavaScript, uh, which is written in V8 engine. So if you see an Chrome browser, so there is an JavaScript runtime environment called as an V8 engine. So in 2009, there is a person so who removes that V8 engine from the browser, and he gives an file systems, and he gives an server setups. So then it becomes an Node.js, and we can create or write and backend applications using in JavaScript, right? So before that, we can't able to use JavaScript in an your PC, right? So you only can able to compile or interpret this particular JavaScript language, scripting language in a browser. So after Node.js only we can write JavaScript in our native machine itself, right? But before JavaScript, there is a concept called as a server, right? So we already know the technological development gives us a best product like in web development. So like we can able to control any particular server across countries, so using this networks and internet, right? So before that there are a lot of languages to write a server. So for example, in basics there is a lot of servers which are running in PHP language. So not only that, we also have an Python. Uh, so you can use a framework like in Django or Flask. So you can also write a server codes in an Java. So Spring Boot is a framework which helps you to write a server codes in Java, right? So and C Sharp language, you can use an .NET framework in C Sharp to write a server codes. So there are a lot of languages uh, which can able to write a server codes, right? So in 2000, after 2009, it's only we can able to write a server codes in JavaScript, right? So before that, so what is a server? So server is a computer that uh, helps user to identify the resource package or identify the logics, so which is related to their particular business, right? So you can create your own server. So if you are having an e-commerce or any particular wholesale business, if you want to move to an uh, online, if you want to move your business to an online, so then you can just create an application. So you can create an applications in different stacks, like you can use and React as a front end, and Bootstrap, sorry, Spring Boot as a backend. So, or you can choose a Django or Flask as a backend, or you can use an PHP Laravel as a backend. So there are a lot of options here. So you can choose any of the backend framework, and you need to choose an front-end framework as well as, right? So you can use an AngularJS, React.js, Next.js. So there are a lot of JavaScript framework, because JavaScript is the mainstream language for an front-end web development. So you can't able to write any other thing in this particular front-end framework, right? So only JavaScript can able to uh, run or interpret in a particular browser environment, right? So there is a client server model. So if you want any particular service throughout the internet, so you can just type an URL, so which is like incrix.com or just google.com. So it's going to be ping that particular server, like, hey, I'm going to get a request from you, so you need to send an homepage file to that particular client. So server is going to respond. So this is the by default home page. So here you can get, and that file is transferred to through the internet to a client. So client can able to run the JavaScript and able to render this particular page, and you can see whatever the website you have right now, right? So if you type in google.com, so it's going to send a request to an Google server, and it's going to give the index page and a bunch of JavaScript bundle files. So these files are going to be showing like loaded in your browser. After it loaded completed, so then it's going to run that particular JavaScript bundle to create that user interface that you are just seeing in this browser, right? So then only you can able to type whatever the search you need, right? So that's the secondary part. This is how the server is going to be work. So we are basically using an client server model in the entire web applications, right? So before that, you can see we are sending any request using a protocol called as an HTTP. So if anyone know what is HTTP? So if you have if you have any idea about that, so just put that in chat box. So, so right. So after this, so I'm going to tell what is this HTTP request is. So you can see the abbreviation for this HTTP is an hypertext transfer protocol. So hypertext is something the text which is linked to some other location. So that is what the hypertext means. So that hypertext is going to transfer using this protocol. So that's why it's called as an HTTP, right? So which is nothing but the protocol set of rules and regulation that how the client and server model is going to be work, right? So user issues an URL before from a browser. So for example, if you're just entering an HTTP colon double slash double forward slash google.com means, so you are going to ping that particular URL to any other server which is located which is pointed to this particular domain name, right? So this URL is going to be hit to this particular server, which is called as an get request. So after that, this server is going to be a response to an client with the file or any other response message. Like if there isn't any file which is available for your domain, so it's going to be show like a 404 error, so that the browser is going to be show an error like the page is not found or anything related to a server error. So everything is considered to be an response from this particular HTTP protocol, right? So this is how this HTTP is going to be work here. So before entering to this particular topic, Express.js, we are all going to be need to know about this particular terms, because this is entirely different from a language. So if you know any other language, you can able to program this network part, this server part using different languages, right? So this is different from a language, right? So you can see there is a concept called as an URI, so Uniform Resource Identifiers. So we are shortly called as an URL, right? So we only know that URL. So Uniform Resource Locator. So which is nothing but if you see that any particular link, so that link is considered as an API. So we can talk that API later. Before that, you can see that sapyor.com. So here is an example link. So we have an sapyor.com. So after that, sapyor.com, HTTP is a protocol we just mentioned, and there is a colon, and after that we have a double forward slash. So after that we have a host domain. So that's what we called as a domain. So www.incryx.com, or here we have an example called as an scrapyard.com. So after that you can see there is a colon and there is a number, 4-digit number, which is called as a port number. So most of you didn't seen this port number yet, because this port number is only used by a developers, right? So port number is nothing but uh, your computer can able to run a different application at a time, right? So port number is also the same thing, that the computer is running different services as at different port numbers. Like if you are entering into your house, so there is a 2 or 3 different ways, right? So you can uh, use your front gate or back gate or something else, right? So that's how you can access your house. So say similar to that, you can run a different application. So this is the port is like a window, right? So you can able to access that particular computer using this port numbers, right? So after that port numbers, so we are just pinging that particular application which is written in that particular machine, that particular server. After that, we are accessing any particular files, like we have a file system called if you take an Windows Explorer, or if you have a MacBook, you can call it as a Finder. So you can see I need to get some PPT of my course, right? So if I want to get my PPT, so I'm going to store that in a documents. So I need to move that to a documents, and here you can see there is a folder called as an PPT. So after that only I can able to access my whatever the resource I have, right? Same thing here. So this SAP or slash OPU is just like considered as an Windows Explorer. So whatever the file we just navigated to get this particular PPT, so the same thing in that particular server, there are a lot of files and systems, files and services. So we need to access any particular files, so that we need to provide that service route. So this route is going to define what is the particular service we are going to get from that server. So that is what we call it as a service route. So after that you can see that resource path is nothing but, so before I enter into this any particular PPT, I need to go to my particular user account. So after that I have a folder called as an courses, and uh, I need to go to an documents, and after documents I have a file called as an PPT. So I need to enter into the PPT. So after only I can get that particular resource file, right? So I'm going to get my pitch deck here. So this is the resource I need, right? So that's why I just go through this documents, uh, PPTs, and after that PPT, so I can get my resource file. So same thing is acting here. So you need to mention whatever the resource file you are going to access, and after that you can have a query. So if you just enter into any particular page, web page, it going to be ask you for login for your account, right? So if you want to log in, so you need to enter your username and as well as a password. This both of the parameters are going to send to that particular server, right? So only after this particular parameters have been sent to a server, then only the server can able to verify the authentication, like this user is exist or this user is not exist or the password is wrong. So this kind of messages are going to be generated by this server, right? So this is considered as a query. So you can just send an username and password in this query, right? So this is how we can able to transfer the data from the client side to an server side, right? So this is not an actually exact method for transferring, but this is one of the method to transfer any kind of data to a server side, right? So if we go to and deeper, you can understand like how we can able to send and different data in a different formats as well as, right? So now we can come to an API part. So you can see if you want to create any particular web application, so these are the architecture we need to follow. So we have a web server, we have a database. That web server is contained some of an code, right? So that web developer need to write some code to get that particular application to be alive. So for example, if you are uh, going to willing to create an e-commerce applications, so we need to get a product list, right? So for that particular product list, we need to write an individual APIs. So the API is API is nothing but this particular service which is written in this language. So if you are using a Node.js, so you are writing your code, API codes in JavaScript. You can write your logics in a JavaScript, right? So that API is responsible for providing you the list of the product. Not only that, you can also edit this product. If you want to remove an photo of a product, or if you want to remove the change the price of the product, so every logic is going to be written in this particular API. So the end point is going to be very, like for example, uh, www.amazon.com/product/product ID. So whatever the product you are mentioning, so it's going to be have carry and some unique ID. So that particular ID slash I want to update this product, right? So update. So if I give this URL, it going to ask what are the data I need to update. So this is how you can write an APIs that can able to rectify the need for a web application. So right, so whatever the logic your application needed, so that logics can be provided using an API. So this is a simple example, like throughout the internet you can find this example. APIs are nothing but you are visiting any restaurant, you are the client, right? So and if you want to order any kind of food, you are going to call an waiter, right? So after the waiter has been arrived, so you're going to order whatever the food you need. So and the waiter is going to pass the order to the chef, right? So chef is the person going to make your food, and after he make that food, he going to be provided to the waiter again, and the waiter is going to be carry our food, and he is the person providing the food, right? So this is how the API is also going to be work, right? Whatever the service we are going to need, so that service is going to be alter an database, or you can add a data in this database, whatever the thing it may be. So you can write an individual logic to this API. So if you get to that API, it's going to do that logic for us. So that's what the concept of an API here, right? So if you have any doubts, so you can just ask in the chat box as well as. So right, so there are different kinds of APIs there, like there is a different protocols as well as different APIs. You can see that we are just mentioning an HTTP protocol. So not only than a HTTP protocol, there is a different protocol called as an MQTT or COAP. So there are a lot of protocols available there. So uh, according to that necessary and usage, this protocol may be vary, right? So like that, we also have a different types of API method that we can approach to an server and get an so approach to an server, and we can able to uh, get whatever the necessary logics we need, right? So this is how this APIs work. So there is a type of API which we are using continuously, and this is the most used API method called as an RESTful APIs, right? So RESTful APIs have a complete access to the server, that we can able to get that particular data, we can able to create an particular data CRUD operations, right? So create, delete, alter. So this kind of CRUD operation can be done using this. So done using this particular RESTful APIs, right? So these are the basic things we need to understand before entering to the Express.js, because these are the things we are going to create in this Express.js library, using this Express.js library, right? So okay, now we can enter into this code section. So we are going to create an server using a Node.js itself. Not we are not going to use an Express.js for now. How to create this particular RESTful API using this HTTP library, which is packages which is available in by default, which is available in this Node.js, right? So we can go for that. So I'm just minimizing this. So whenever you're going to create a Node.js project or any kind of project, so you need to create a folder, right? So I'm going to create a folder and name it as an express server. I'm going to keep this name. So after creating this file, so this is the root file of my applications. So whatever the logics or whatever the configuration which are going to be done, so everything are going to be done within this particular folder. So this is called as a root folder of your project, right? So already you completed a Node.js. So if you already have an experience or knowledge in a Node.js, you know that, or any other language, you know that this root file is important, like for managing this any particular application, right? So now I'm going to do open this Express Server particular folder using an Visual Studio Code editor. So I'm just using an Visual Studio Code editor. So this is not compulsory for you guys. So if you want to any other code editor like Sublime Text or any other thing which you are familiar with, you can go with that. So I'm having a lot of experience using an Visual Studio Code. So I'm just using going to use this Visual Studio Code. So I'm just drag this file and put it in an VS Code. It's going to be open this particular Express server. So I think now it's going to be visible for you. Okay, right. So now what I'm going to do is open a terminal. So if you have an uh, Windows machine, so you can just see an option called as a terminal. So also if you are using a Mac, you can go to a terminal. So and you can create a new terminal itself. So I'm just creating that. It's going to be open a terminal below that particular editor page, and now you can see that our file name is existed in this Express server, right? So now I'm going to initiate that Node.js project because Express.js is also a part of a Node.js package, right? So I'm going to create a Node.js project. So you can create a Node.js project using an npm init. So if you want to configure this particular application on your own, so you can give an -y, so which is going to be give an s for the whatever the things which are going to be asked for the next thing. So now I'm going to show you what are the things it's going to be asked. So just provide an npm init, give an enter. So it's showing that Express server. Yes, now you can see that it's showing an package name. So it's showing that sorry, the name only contains an URL friendly characters. So we are going to use an URL friendly characters in this package name. So I'm going to enter that, and after that it's going to ask you for the version. So whatever the version you are going to give the name for particular version for your application, you can provide. So by default it's an 1.0.1, or you can also give a name for it, so like a 0.0.1. So you can just change that. So if you want to provide any description for your application, you can provide. Now I'm going to enter, and you can set an entry point for your application. So like index.js, server.js, or main.js, whatever the main file for your application, you can provide. So it's going to be called as an app.js, and there is some test command, so I don't want to do anything in that. So after we have a git repository, so I don't want that. And we can provide an keys, author name, license, and you can click and enter to create an package.json. So this package.json file is responsible for managing our project. So whatever the libraries you are just downloading and whatever the information we have, so everything is going to be managed in this particular package.json file, right? So after this, I'm going to create a file called as an app.js. So you need to maintain the same name. So here I'm mentioning that app.js, then you need to maintain that file as an app.js. So if you want to change the name of the file here, you want to change that name in this package.json also, right? So we just created the file, we just created our project. So in this app.js, this is the entry point of our application. So I'm going to write an program to create, write a code to create an server, right? Without an Express JS library. So I'm going to create a server using an another package which is by default available in an Node.js package. So for a networking purpose, every language contains some default packages. So like that, Node.js is also having and some default packages for a networking purpose, right? So I'm going to create a server using an const variable http. So required, so you can just mention that the package name is an http. So this module is, you can see the module http. To use the http server and client, one must require an http node http package. So with this is a default package, so I don't want to install or anything, I don't want to do anything in this particular package. So by default, which is available in an Node.js package itself, right? So I'm just importing this library package here. After importing that, I'm going to create an object or create a server using this package http, right? So here it's showing by default const server. I'm creating a server here. So http, there is an method called as an create server. Okay, there is a method called as an create server. In this create server, I'm going to have an just give me a second. I'm going to have an callback function. So callback functions are nothing but after just run this particular method, so it's going to call another function which is written by us. So that's what the callback function. So if you are writing some function, so after okay. So just turn on their mic. Right. So before entering to this particular topic, we need to know what is a callback function itself. Right. So there is a function. So I'm going to call this particular function. So just leave this particular line of code. So I'm going to create here. So I'm going to just okay. So I'm going to just disable my Copilot, so which is an GitHub extension. So the AI that can able to predict whatever the thing which I'm going to write. So I'm just disable that. So now I'm just creating a function, and you can create an name, give a name for that particular function. So this is how you can initiate the function, right? So after this function, particularly after calling this function, I'm going to call another function. Right. So after running this particular function, I'm going to call another function. So that's what we call it as a callback function, right? So here in this server setup, we're creating a server using this http dot create server method. After this method, I'm going to call an callback function. So in this function only, we are going to write whatever the logic we are going to need, right? So I'm just removing this. Back to that, I'm going to just remove that. So now I'm having http dot create server method. So in this callback function, so I'm going to mention it as an request comma response. These are the parameters we need to give to the any particular server. So right, so if you are using your browser, you can just provide whatever the URL you need, for example www.google.com. So which means you are giving the request, right, request to the server. So we are having a request and the server is going to send you a response. So that's why we are having these two parameters. These two parameters required to just provide the response, right? So now inside this particular function, I'm going to write response dot, there is a method called as an write. Response is what we are just getting as a parameter. So this parameter is given by this particular create server method. So we are not responsible for this request or response. So which is going to be managed in this particular create server. So this method is going to handle everything. So we are going to just use these parameters to provide the response or get a data from a request. That's it, right? So in this particular response, I'm going to write a hello world hello world. After that, I'm going to end that particular response, rest dot end. So there is a method called as an end, which is responsible for end that particular request, or otherwise our in our client side it going to be showing that loading page, right? So only after the end it going to be completely get that particular response. So after that, listen, so you can see that I'm creating a server instant. After creating a server, what I am going to do is just call that server which I'm just created here. In this server, I'm going to do something called as an dot listen. So this is also a method which is available in this particular HTTP method, HTTP library. So this listen method is nothing but this is responsible for providing you that necessary response. So we need to allocate the port number. So here I'm going to provide the port number called 3000. So you can either provide a number or string. So I'm going to provide a number 3000. After that, I can create a callback function. So you can also provide this in your code. So in this callback function, so once this server has been created and listening to the port 3000, it's going to call this particular callback function. So in this callback function, what I'm going to do is console.log. I'm going to just log whatever the thing I'm just need. So here I'm going to log server.
அது வெக்ஸ் ஆன மாதிரி ஆயிடுச்சு. சரி ஒரு தடவை தானே பார்ப்போம், நீ அடுத்த தடவை போடுவோம், அடுத்த தடவை வரலன்னா அடுத்து என்னன்றதை பார்ப்போம் அப்படின்னு ஒவ்வொரு தடவையும் மாற்றிக்கிட்டே இருக்காங்க.
Okay, so you can see that server is running
தெரியாதப்ப
in a port.
தெரியாதப்ப தெரிஞ்சிருந்தா
on port 3000. So I'm just providing this message for our console, right? So I'm just this line. So these are the necessary step to just create an initial stage server. So which is going to be handling that requests, right? So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to run this code. So I'm going to interpret this code using this
Uh,
package.json.
Hello. Hi, I have
Yes,
a doubt.
yeah,
May
sure.
I know that the callback function is something that you put in within the parenthesis, and is that what is generally the callback function?
uh, this is a normal function. So if you just put a function inside another function, then only it's called a callback function. So it doesn't mean that this particular syntax is a callback function. This is an another syntax for a function. So if you want to create a function in a JavaScript, you can write it as a function and provide a name and give an parenthesis and curly braces to define a function, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is an ECMA script 5. So after ECMA script 6, there is an update called as an arrow function. So if you want to create a function called as an, so I'm just providing an var and give the name as an add. Here you can just use this arrow function to create a function. So these both are the same thing here. So if you want to do this, you can also provide a function here, and you can simply remove this arrow. So this is also correct syntax, right? So there are different methods in updating the version of JavaScript. These are something which is constantly changing.
Okay. So here, in that previous concept, can you please explain that callback function that you were calling? Yeah, in line number 3, you said.
Okay, here, so we are just creating a some function called as an add, right? So if you whatever the function you can create depends upon your logic. You can create whatever the function you need. The functions are a block of code. Whenever you need, you can just call their names. So whatever the lines, whatever the logics which are written inside this function, so if you call that name, so it's going to be run after that, right? So you can just call how many times you need, so it's going to be print, it going to just run whatever the code which you have written inside. For example, I'm going to log something, log. So I'm just writing that I'm going to console log this particular hello world itself. So I'm just calling this add function for 5 times. What it's going to be do is, if I run this particular file, it's going to print this hello world for 5 times, right? So this is how, in this particular add function, after completing after printing this hello world, I'm going to run something. Like for example, in this callback function, I'm just writing a callback function here. So what I'm going to do is console dot, so I'm just writing that hello world is just now printed. So if you call this particular function, what it's going to be do is, so first initially we are calling this method function, right? So this function we are written that it going to print an hello world. After printing that hello world, whatever the callback we are written, so whatever the function we are just written here, it going to be execute. So in this callback function, I'm just written hello world is just now printed. So I'm just mentioning that whatever the function I have written, so this callback function is going to be run after the function has been executed. So that's what callback is. Is there any
Yeah,
doubt?
understood. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. So same here. So whatever the function which is written inside this create server by default, which is available in this particular library called as an HTTP, so that's going to be run. right? So we don't know what are the things which is available here. So if you want to know, so you need to get this particular HTTP packages from that Node.js root file itself. So you need to just rip that Node.js packages, and you need to find out this library, and you can find this create server method in that particular library package itself. So you can see that create type of HTTP incoming message, so server response, so server request. So these are the things which is available in this create server, right? So from that, after particularly executing this create server method, it's going to return something called as an request and response. So these are the things we are going to, just give me a second. So right, so it's going to be return this particular request. So whoever just requested to the server, so which we can get through this request, and whatever the response we are giving, give to that particular person who just requested, so we just return inside this particular body. So this is how you can able to create a server, right? So now what I'm doing is, so get this particular server, and this server is going to be, because you can create a different kind of servers. For example, const server 2, I'm call it as a server 1, because these are the instance of a HTTP protocol, HTTP that method, right? So create server, I'm going to do the same thing here. So but what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to change the text here. Right, so you can just mention this as a server 1 here. So you can create a different server also, and you need to provide that individual server to an individual port. So server 1 is running in an port 3000, and I'm going to make the server 2 run in a port 3001, right? So now I'm going to just run this particular code. So npm, before that, I'm going to write a script in a package.json. So okay, you can see that in this script. So can you just please mute your microphone? So whoever,
இப்ப இவ மார்க் வாங்கிட்டான்ல ஆமா
Vasumati ma'am, so can you please just mute your microphone? Okay, right, so you can see in this,
பல்ல பல்ல சிரிச்சுட்டு வாங்க வெக்கமே இல்லாம உட்காந்து பாருங்க அது நடக்கவே செய்யும் இவங்க அதான் நான் சொன்னேன் தலையிடாம இருந்தோம்னாலே பாதி பிரச்சனை சால்வு இந்த ஜென்ஸ் வந்து ரொம்ப தலையிட்டு தான் மேம் ரொம்ப பிரச்சனையா இருக்கு என்கிட்ட சொல்லிட்டாரு அவங்களாம் சின்ன பிள்ளைங்களா அவங்கவுங்கள சாப்பிட்டுக்கணும் அப்படிங்கிறாரு அப்புறம் சுபிமா இது வேணுமாப்பா சுபிமா எடுத்துக்கிட்டியாப்பா அப்ப என்கிட்ட என்ன சொல்றீங்க அவன் இந்த காலை எடுத்து வைக்கவே இல்ல ஆனா சொல்லாரு எல்லாம் நீயே எடுத்து வச்சுடா அப்படின்றாரு ஆனா அவளுக்கு மட்டும் தோசை ஊத்துவோமா நெய் ஊத்துவோமான்னு
okay.
Okay, Avinash, you can continue.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So you can see this script particular, this is a JSON format. So I'm going to come to this particular JSON format after that. So you can just like remember that JSON is nothing but as an organized data structure. So we can provide the information using this particular JSON format, right? So in the script file, there is a script function called as a test. So which is by default written in that. I don't need this test anymore. So I'm going to remove that. So in this double quotation, I'm going to create a thing called as a start. I'm going to provide that double colon here. So in this, I'm going to run node. So node is a keyword which is responsible for running this particular file. Whatever the file we are just written the JavaScript, so we can run using this node keyword. So I'm going to use app.js, JS, right? So without this start script itself, you can run this app.js file. So by just calling that node app.js, so which is showing an error. So port 3000 is already in run. So I'm going to just change my port number to 3001 and as well as 3002, right? So again, I'm going to call this node app.js. So you can see now the server is both servers are running. So I'm just want to mention that 3001 and 3002 here. So now I'm going to close this server again. So if you are using an Windows, you can use an Control and C to close this server, and if you are using a Mac, you can use an Command and C to just close that particular server. So now I'm going to again run this particular app. So node app.js. Now you can see it runs in an port 3001 and 3002, right? So whenever I need to run this, so I don't want to provide this node app.js. So this going to be mentioned in this npm start, right? So I'm don't want to again and again mention this npm run node app.js. Instead of that, I'm going to run npm start. So now you can see it just do the same thing, but it mentioned that express server at version 0.01 start. So I'm going to do that node app.js, which is we written in here, right? So why we do that here is uh, like this is an application, so application have a starting point, right? So you don't want to write any particular file individually, so you can just compose whatever the files, JavaScript files you have, so everything is going to be run through this package.json. So that's why we are just writing a script inside this particular script. So if you're having an very small project like we are now writing this app.js file alone, so it's easier to write node space app.js instead of writing this npm start here, right? So but if your project is getting bigger and bigger, so it's much easier to write npm start instead of node app.js. So because there are a lot of things are going around, so you need to start and different files at a same time. So for example, if I'm going to create another file called as an server.js. So now I'm going to run this both file at the same time. I'm going to use a command called as an double and sign and node server.js. So now, so same thing. Now I'm going to do is just log this file. So log from server, right, .js. So now I'm going to close this file once again and npm start. You can see that, so it shows that app.js and as well as an node server.js. So these both files are going to be executed. So that's why we are using this npm start. So these are the example here, but we also have a lot of files which are going to be run simultaneously. So that's why we need to use this particular script in a package.json. So I'm going to delete this file. So once again, I'm going to run this npm start. So now the both server has been running. So I'm going to get the response, whatever which I have written here. Using a browser, I'm going to call a request from a local host. It's not going to be 3000. We are using an 3001, right? So I'm just going to call this. You can see whatever the message which we are just written here, this is from server 1. You can see this is from server 1, right? So we get that particular request. Also, I can call another server, run in the port number called as 3002. I'm going to enter. You can see this is from a server 2, right? So now I'm going to open a developer tool. Tab. So I'm going to refresh the page. You can see there are a bunch of fields have been just called here. So I'm going to call this main document file. So that just please, or it is just please mute your microphone. Yeah. So you can see that it's a request URL called as an HTTP localhost. Is this visible, guys?
Yes.
So you can see that HTTP localhost 3002. So we are just pinging that particular server 3002. It says that status code called as an 2000 OK, and we are providing a request method called as an get, right? So there are a lot of informations about that particular servers which has been provided in this HTTP URL. So you can see this is one of the HTTP URL. So that HTTP protocol contains of response header, request header. So these things are going to be have in here, right? So accepted, like the whatever the data we are just accepted here. So these are the text format, or you can also have a image, or you can also have a video format. So these are the different format you can also able to send through this particular URL HTTP request, right? So you can do the same thing in an Postman. So I'm just opening an Postman application. So you can download this application free for an personal usage. So I'm going to create a new request here. Before that, I'm going to close whatever the thing I'm just open, just to closing that. So, so now you can see I'm creating a new get request. So you can, there are a lot of different methods like get, post, put, patch, delete, copy, head. So there are a lot of methods. By default, we are going to use this get method. And what is the URL? So HTTP :/ localhost :3001, right? So this is what the URL is. Now I'm able to send that request. You can see it shows that right? It shows that this is from server 1. So if you see the raw file, so it shows only that this is from server 1. So this is how you can create an initial server endpoint that if you call that particular server, it's going to give the response to that particular server and get whatever the data which is available on that particular server. So this is how you can create a basic server using an HTTP itself, right? Not even we are uh, not even we just introduce an Express.js, we just created the server using that available package called as an HTTP, right? So this is how we can create an server. So, but we are using an another server instead of using an HTTP. Why we are using an Express.js is, so we are having a lot of flexibilities and simplicities which are available in an Express.js. We are going to benefit to that particular thing. So that's why we are using an Express.js instead of just using an HTTP, right? So there are a lot of difference in using these two things. For example, so I'm going to show you an example itself. So I'm going to delete one of the server. I don't need that. Server 2 has been deleted, and this is also mentioned as a server, right? So if you call and just call this particular response, you're just providing an this is from a server 1. So also we need to provide an different, for example, slash. So this is 301. So slash home page, I'm going to get an home page. So you can see for everything it's going to be show that this is from server 1, right? So now I'm going to go here. Before sending a response, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log something. So log something. What I'm going to log is request. From request, I'm going to get the URL. So from the request, I'm going to get the URL. So now I'm going to restart this server. So if I just refresh this page, I'm going to get the same response from here. But if you see here, it shows that slash home is the URL which we are just called, right? So here the fave icon and then home is just called here. So here it shows an home and fave icon has been called, right? So this is how it going to be differentiate. We are going to be differentiate that particular request, right? So for example, I'm going to send a different request. So for example, if I'm just delete this line, 6th line, if from request.url, I'm writing a condition, if this is slash home, then I'm going to provide response dot write. It says it's going to be a home, right? So I'm just writing that if I call the home, I'm going to be provide the different data, right? So if it's an empty endpoint, so if I'm providing another endpoint called as an slash about, it's going to be written that says about, right? So this is how we are just differentiate that different route. So now I'm going to call that home again. So before that, you need to restart the server. So I'm just restarting the server. If you feel that you don't want to restart whenever you change the code, there is a library called as a nodemon, which is uh, take a responsibility for whatever the code has been changed. It going to be show restart the server automatically, so you don't need to restart the server manually. So I'm going to run that npm install nodemon, nodemon. This is a dependency for development purpose, right? It's not going to be used in a production version, so that's why I'm using an hyphen capital D. So if I enter that, it's going to be start installing our library package, right? If you go to the package.json, you can see that in dev dependency, it shows that nodemon package version is on 3.0.1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another script called as an development dev, shortly called it as a dev. Instead of running this node app.js, I'm going to use a nodemon app.js, right? Instead of just calling an npm start, I'm going to use an npm run dev. You can see now the server is by default it's running. Whenever I just change any of the code, for example, I'm going to change the port number here, you can see automatically it's restart here. So it's going to save that a little bit time for you. So you don't want to restart your code manually. So this is one of our tips apart from our topic. So I'm going to just change the name. So now I'm going to refresh this page, which is pointing to a home directory. So refreshing that, so you can see it shows an home, right? So if I just call an about, you can see it shows a different endpoint about, right? So if I'm just call an empty thing, it's not going to be show anything because we didn't do we didn't provide any of that particular thing for just forward slash, right? So this is how you can create a server using an normal HTTP package. So if you want to write a large big projects, if you want to work in a big project, so this HTTP server is a lot more complicated than an express, so you can simply understand that. So whatever the routing process, whatever the endpoint you are going to write, everything is going to return inside this single callback function. So which is going to be very much more complicated for a large project, right? So that's why we are having an package called as an express.js. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just close this server and remove the entire code. So here I'm going to install an express package npm I express. So I'm just importing this npm I express and press an enter here. It's going to be take some time to install. So now I just installed here. So now you can see it shows a dependency of express.js, right? So it's have a two dependency package. One is an development dependency, one is an runtime dependency. This dependency is much more important compared to an dev dependency because only in a development purpose we are going to use some of the library like nodemon. So other than that, for a production purpose itself, we need some of the libraries, so which are going to be managed in this dependencies, right? So that's how we are going to manage our application, right? So just go for an app.js. Now we just install this express. here I'm going to go for an app.js. So we just completed our Node.js server using an HTTP package which is pre-built available in Node.js package. Now we are using an Express.js package, which is a like Express.js is a minimal and flexible Node.js web application framework. This framework provides a robust set of features for a web and mobile application itself. You can create a single server for an web application as well as a mobile application. So also it is an open source project, guys, so you don't need to pay any of the things for using this particular Express.js framework. So it also has a large community support. So this community support is much more important than anything, because uh, if you didn't update your package periodically, it's going to have a lot of vulnerabilities. So for example, if I install this Express.js, it shows that found 0 vulnerabilities. So time goes on. So there may be a lot of persons who want to hack this particular applications, whatever the application which is written in an Express.js. So if you don't update your project, it's going to be easily hacked by someone else, right? So that's what the vulnerability is. So it has a large community support. So that's why we are just using this Express.js for an web application, right? So we are going to create this particular server using an Express.js. After that, we are going to see a little routing things. There is a concept called as a middleware, and we are going to see a JSON format. And after that, you can see there is an HTTP status code. So you already know that 404 is a client side error. 404 is a not found error. So if you have any errors in the server, it's going to be called as an 500. Uh, you can also see a page called as an internal server error status code 500. So 200 means success. So what whenever if you go to the your browser, so there is something called as an request. So if you just go there, right? So I just close that particular server. So if I'm going to this, so for example, I'm going to any particular network tab. If I'm click to this, you can see that there is a method called as a get method. Generally you can see it shows that status code called as an 200, right? So it shows the status code called as an 200. 200 means there is no problem with this particular request, so it's worked perfectly, right? So that's how we are going to manage our request. So this is the status code that we need to manage. So any of the website or any of the endpoint is redirecting to any other endpoint, the status code is going to be having an 300 something, and 400 is an client side error. If you are providing any wrong URL, it's going to be show and 400 errors. And in server in any particular server, if there is any error, it's going to be show and 500 error. So these things are also going to be maintained by us, guys. So now we can just go to an VS Code and write a code in an Express.js. So first of all, I need to import this package. So const express. So I'm just importing this package express required. So it shows that express here, right? So I'm just imported this package. Using this express, I'm going to create an instance, right? So how we created an using an HTTP, we created an instance called as a server, right? Same like that, using this express, I'm going to create an instance. So const, I'm going to name that instance as a app, right? Equal to express. So this is how I can create an instance of this Express server. Using this app, I can able to write whatever the thing I need. So like if you want to create a server, so just you can use this app for creating a server. For example, I'm going to run this in a port const port. The constant variable should be in a capital letter. So every letters in this particular word should be in a capital letter. So this is a constant word, or this is a global variable. We can call it as a global variable. So I'm going to provide that port number as 5000. You can give whatever the port number you want. So before we provide the port number of 3001 and 3002, same like that I'm providing a port number of 5000. So you can also use a 3000 or 3001 or 3002. That's upon to you guys. So after that, what I'm going to do is same thing, app.listen is another method. So in this method, I'm going to provide that port number, and I'm going to call and callback function again. In this callback function, I'm going to log something. What I'm going to log is your server is running on port so here you can see this is a template literal concept. So you are using a backticks. So this particular thing is a backticks. So you can get the backticks above the tab button in your keyboard. So this backticks is helpful for writing and template. So here I can change the port number periodically. I don't want to, whenever I want to change this port number, I don't want to change the port number everywhere else. So automatically it's going to be changed here. So that's why I'm writing this thing using an backticks. Previously I just written here like using an in a string format. I just written your server is run on port 3000 or 5000 or something else. For example, I can just mention as port 5000. So if I write this particular line, if I change this to an port 6000, it's going to be still print this 5000, right? So that's why I'm using this template literal. So this helps us to print whenever I change that port number, it's also changed the port number here, right? So now what I'm going to do is npm run dev. So server is crashed because port 5000 is already in use. So I'm going to change the port number as maybe 550. So 550 is also in use. So I'm going to change that to 3001 again. Yes. So now I have a port 3001 which is running our Express application. So I'm going to go for an browser. I'm going to refresh it again. It shows that can't get, right? So this is because we didn't provide any response which should be provided when you call this particular server. So what I'm going to do is, so there is something called as an app.get. So in this get method, if I call this basic endpoint slash means that you are just calling this host ID itself, right? Then you are going to run whatever the thing you need. So I'm going to provide a callback function here. So mention it as a response, a first request and then response, right? So here what I'm going to do is I'm just send an response.send. I'm just going to mention it as a same thing, hello world maybe. So I don't want to end anything. So I don't want to mention that rest.end something. So automatically it's going to be end. So I don't need to provide any of this end thing, right? So this is how I can rewrite my API endpoints here. So if I'm refresh here, you can see the hello world here. If I'm just go to the local host, whatever the request we are just provided, so you can see it's a status 200. So which means that our server has been successfully sent the data to the client. You can see there is an header called as an X powered by Express, right? So this Express server is sending an thing called as an X powered by Express. So these are the information which we can get from the server side. So like we can get the date and time, like when the request has been made. So everything is going to be shown in this request header and response header, right? So this is how we can simply provide the API endpoint. So if I want to provide any other endpoint, so for example, same like app.get. So in this /home, so I'm going to just copy this and paste it here. Instead of just sending an hello world, I'm going to send an home. So now I'm going to call that /home. So now you can see it just get the response as a home. So this is how you can simply differentiate this particular different API endpoint, right? So in that previous HTTP package, we are just writing that entire endpoint in this particular listen. Yes, right. So we are writing an entire endpoint in this create HTTP server, but now we are just writing in different endpoints in different methods. So this is how convenient is this particular Express.js is, right? So after that, so I already shown that in this particular PPT. So we having and different methods, get, post, put and delete, right? So we already seen that get. So by default, if you call this URL from this Chrome or browser URL text box, it's by default it's going to be call it as a get method. But if you are going to use and post, put or delete, you can't send that request using this URL bar. Instead, we are going to use a postman for that, right? So we have a post here, post method here. We are having a server like 301. If I send a request here, it shows that cannot get the post because I didn't write anything for that particular post. So how I'm going to write is simply app.post. So how I get this, how I write this get method, the same way I'm going to write this post method. So in this post, I'm going to use that same API endpoint slash. You can see that same API endpoint can be used for a different methods like get, post, put and delete. So same endpoint has can have an 4 methods, right? So now I'm just using the same endpoint slash here and sending an hello world in this get method. Now I'm sending an hello from post. So I'm going to call this particular request from postman, we can see hello from post, right? So but you can't able to call it from this particular URL bar. The post method can't be called from this particular URL bar. Instead you can write an JavaScript and you can use a fetch function. From there you can mention you're going to call a get or post method in a front end, but you can't able to call a post method in a browser URL bar. So now I'm going to do something different, because we are just providing that res.send hello from post. Instead of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a data from, so I'm going to send a data from the post. So that's what the post is responsible for. So you can see in this body I can able to send a data. So here I'm going to send a raw data of from client.
So for other CRUD process, we have to use Postman, isn't only for get we can use a browser. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Only if you going to use a get, then you can just choose a browser URL bar. But other than that get method, post, put, delete, patch or something, so you can only use able to use a postman.
Postman,
If
yeah.
you don't want to use a postman, there is also an extension which is available in this
VS
VS
Code.
itself,
Yeah, yeah.
or you can use browser itself. So in a browser, so for example, so if I'm going to run fetch, you can see in console panel, you can see I'm going to call a fetch. In this fetch, I can mention that API endpoint, comma, I can send an object here, and I'm going to mention that method called as a post. So this is how you can call a post method or delete method or put method using your front end, right? So without this fetch method, you can't able to call a post or delete or put in a browser environment.
Mm. Sir, could you please post that piece of code in the chat so that we can also do together?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, right. So I hope you get that particular code, right? So this is how you can able to call and request from a particular browser. So if you are using a post, for example, then so then Okay. So you can see, is this visible, guys? Visible for you? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
It is
thank
visible,
you.
sir.
Yeah. So I just call this post method. You can see that post method from a postman itself. But also I can able to call using this particular JavaScript code using this fetch forward slash method. I mentioned that as a post. If this is available, this is an asynchronous function, so that's why I'm just using a promise called as an then. So if this particular post endpoint is available, then I'm going to fetch that response. From that response, I'm going to extract the text. If this text is available, then I'm going to print the text. So this is what I'm just written here. So, and you can see that hello from post, the exact same thing which is shown in this postman, right? So this is how you can able to get the post method from this uh, browser itself, guys. So we need some JavaScript for fetching and data from a fetch method. So after that, so I'm going to do a different thing here. So I'm just sending a data to the client. Now I'm going to receive a data from the client. Const data equal to rec. From request, I'm going to get a body. It shows undefined because of I'm going to use a middleware called as an JSON format. So if you want to send a data from this client, guys, so if you want to get the data to the server, so then you are going to do this app.use. So this is how you can able to insert a middleware. Middleware is nothing but, so I'm just showing that. So middleware is nothing but if you are sending a request from a client side, so I'm going to send a response. So this is how we just written a code. If I have a request from this particular endpoint, I'm going to respond with a hello world. But before that, before giving that response, I can able to do a lot of things because if I want to send a JSON format, I need to parse that data, parse that particular body using that body parsing method. And after that, I want to use an authentication because if you are using a protected route, because this whatever the information you are accessing from that client endpoint, which is sensitive, means you need to provide an authentication because after the login you are getting an authentication key. Whenever you are providing a request, you need to provide that authentication key itself, right? So that thing is also could be done in an middleware, right? So after, if you're having a different routes, you can also provide that route as a middleware. So this is how the middleware is works. So after that only you can able to get the response. So these are the function which is run in between that endpoints, right? So I'm going to use that app.use. So in that use, I'm going to call that express.json. So what this is going to be do is it going to be pass the data from the body. So without passing the data, you can't get the data from that particular client. So here I'm going to convert this as a JSON, and now I'm going to provide a JSON file, message, and this message is going to be from client. You can see that we are having a message from client, right? So if I want to send that /login, right, I'm going to write the endpoint for that, and I'm going to provide that email ID, and as well as a password. So I'm going to send to that particular server. Here what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a login endpoint for a post method, app.post/login. This login is going to be carry a request and as well as respond. This is common for every endpoint. So in this, I'm going to get that data from the body. So before that, const email ID, I'm destructuring the data here, email ID and password equal to, sorry, so and I'm going to send the response. Before that, I'm going to login that email and as well as data, email ID and password. After that, I'm going to send a response. Respond.json. I'm sending a JSON data here. In this JSON data, I'm just providing that you are authenticated. So you are authenticated. So this is just like how you can create an endpoint using an using a JSON format. So now I'm going to do is I'm going to provide an email ID and password, right? So I'm going to send this request. You can see I'm getting the message that you are authenticated, right? So this is how you can just pass the data. So I think I don't want this JSON.stringify anymore. If I send this again, you can see message you are authenticated, right? Now if I go to this console page, I'm seeing that I'm sending the particular thing data from this post method. It shows that avinas@encryx.com and as well as the password here. What I'm going to do is, after getting this data from this client side, you are not going to just provide that you are authenticated or something else. You are going to check that data or the particular account is available in this database or not, After that only you are going to provide the message called as an you are authenticated. Also you need to check the password is correct or not. So only if the password is correct, then only you're going to provide this you are authenticator or something message. So I'm going to show how we are going to do that here. So for example, if email ID equivalent to so and as well as the password is also equivalent to 1 2 3 4 5 6, then I am going to send the message called as an so you are authenticated. So also I am going to send a personalized message. Right, so or something else. I'm going to just send the response. Your user ID, maybe we can call it as an email. So ID or password is wrong. So I'm just handling the error like if the user ID is whatever I'm just providing here is correct, then it's going to send this message or it's going to be response using this particular message. So now I'm going to postman. So I'm going to just remove the password last digit, send that. It shows that your email ID or password is wrong, right? So now I'm going to provide the correct information, send. So I'm getting a personalized message like hello Avinash, you are authenticated, right? So this is how you can able to create a server and like using the post method. So that post method holds the data from the client. So in this body you are having this post method, right? In this body you can able to pack the data from the client to the server, and you can get the data to the server and you can able to authenticate that data or verify the data in this database. So and you can respond according to the data you have been provided, right? So this is how you can able to create a basic express server, guys. So there are a lot to know about this server, so this is just a basics. So I think if you are good in Node.js or if you are good in JavaScript, it's going to be take around 1 or 2 weeks to learn complete about this particular package express.js. So there are a lot more things like an authentications, routing. So these are the basic things we just able to see here. So apart from this, there are a lot of things in this express.js server. So I think you able to understand that express.js web framework is much more easier compared to that http framework we just use, right? So const http. So express.js is much more compatible and easier compared to this particular http package. So that's why we are using an express.js. But I want to provide you one interesting fact that this express.js is built top of that particular http protocol. So this particular http package itself. So without this http package, the express.js library is not going to be useful or it's not going to be work anymore. So that's how these libraries are going to be built. So without this http package, So there is no express.js package, right? So that's why we need to know something basic about that root. Then only we can able to have a lot more flexibility about our work, right? So that's why I just mentioned before an express, I just mentioned how to create a server in this native Node.js itself without using any particular library, external library, right? So that's all for today's session, guys. So if you have any doubt in this particular topics, you can just ask your so you can just ask your questions in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and you can ask whatever the doubts you have, or else you can provide the feedback and we can wind up the session, guys. Thank you guys. So any doubts, you can just post that in here.
So hi.
Yes.
This package hyphen log.json is actually implemented like when we run this express package, isn't it?
So what you are just asking, just come up once again.
The package hyphen log.json. So when you create
Okay.
this express server, the project, when we run this, I noticed that when we run npm express, we get this package log.json and all the packages get updated to express.js. So
Yeah.
just wanted to confirm on that.
Actually, this logged once again. I share my screen VS Code, so you can see this log.json is nothing but. So you are using a different libraries, right? So that libraries is also an individual node package, individual Node.js projects. So whatever we are just returning right now, so this libraries is also just like that. So that's why we are having an uh, this express.js library. There is a lot of libraries inside that particular thing. So that versions are also going to be mentioned or managed in this particular log.json. So which is going to be default thing. So you don't need to worry about anything. So this Node.js is also responsible. This node module is also responsible for the library package which is available. So if you are willing to download any particular library, so this package log.json and node module is going to be available default, right?
Okay, yeah. So, if like today I close this port, like I end it and like doing Control C, and tomorrow if I'm running on the same port, so I'll be able to access like 3000 or 5001. I'll be able to
Yeah.
access the same port, right?
Before closing your VS Code or before closing your Windows, you need to close that server. Like I already mentioned that if you are using a Windows, you just point and pointer in a terminal and just click and control and C. So it's going to be close the server. So after closing it, only you can able to reuse that particular port again. If you didn't close that and you close the entire system, so it by background it going to be run that particular application in this particular port. So that's why.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other doubts there? So how to connect between different nodes and ports? So nodes as peer. So if you are willing to do that in a peer-to-peer connection, so this is completely different concept. So this is a client server model, right? So in peer-to-peer connection, so there is no client or no server. So every device is going to be act as a client and as well as a server. So but if you want to connect on different nodes, so you can use an fetch method. So like in JavaScript there is a fetch method. You can fetch the data from the different nodes using a fetch method. So that's how you can able to connect to the different nodes. Or if you want to use any other things like subscribe on the publish model, so which is by default available in like payment systems. We are using an UPI payment system, right? So there is called as an pub sub concept, publish and subscribe model. So you are if you willing to provide any particular message to any particular channel, so if you are a subscriber of that particular channel, you are going to get that particular message. So this is how we can able to connect different nodes. So this is also linked to an blockchain technologies. So the same thing is a user in a blockchain. So that's how you can able to connect.
Yeah, so Avinash sir, I also wanted to ask like how big role does this Express.js play in blockchain development?
So in particular blockchain development, Express.js is just uh, like we just able to create a proof of concept using this Express.js. This is not an correct way to create a blockchain, because JavaScript itself is not a best idea to create a blockchain, guys, because this is a dynamic language. There are a lot of memory leaks in our particular JavaScript language itself, because you can see that we don't have any typed system in this particular language, right? So also this is an interpreter language, not a compiled based language. So instead of writing an blockchain application in an Express.js or JavaScript, so you can choose any other thing like an C++ or Rust based language. So which is much more efficient compared to an JavaScript. So I personally prefer that these two languages are going to be suitable for blockchain development. Other than that, you can also use this Express as an application, but not as an blockchain. Particular entire architecture cannot be done using this JavaScript.
Yeah, we use Solidity for that purpose. Solidity
Solidity,
programming language.
Solidity is a smart contract based language. It's not actually a proper language for a computation purpose. So this Solidity is only runs in an Ethereum virtual machine, EVM, I think so. So which is created by an Ethereum team itself. So we can't able to write a blockchain in an Solidity. So you can see that Bitcoin is written in an C++ language, not an any other particular fancy terms like Python or Java or JavaScript. So which is written in C++, so like that.
Yeah, for Ethereum blockchain, we generally use Solidity, and for Hyperledger Fabric, the Golang language is used. So
Yeah,
this Express.js can be basically used for any front-end
web
development, right?
yeah, web
Like
application
for the
development.
API purpose.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Sure, you can use that for API purpose only, but you can't use that for any kind of serious computations like blockchain or something else.
Right, yeah.
Any other doubts? Participants, if you have any other doubts, you can ask. Or otherwise, we'll switch on to the photo session as we have already informed. Kindly switch on your video for 2 minutes so that let's take a snap. Switch on your video, please. Please, participants. Participants, thank you all. Thank you all for your cooperation. Thank you. We will meet tomorrow. With the, thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. And
Thank you,
sir, for
Avinash
the-
sir, for the wonderful session. Avinash sir, thank you so much for the session.
போட்டியா நானு கௌதம் சார் எனக்கு அனுப்ப சொல்லிட்டேன். பிளேஸ்மெண்ட் இது நீங்க மார்னிங் வந்ததையும் நைட் அவர் முடியிற வரைக்கும் பாரு.